Welcome to Tippcast by the Nina Guardian. Hello and welcome to Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, and Shane Brophy, sports editor of the Nina Guardian, beside me. How are things with you, Shane? We were both in Portlaoise over the weekend, fairly horrendous conditions, but Tipperary did get over the line. Not probably the most barnstorming performance we've ever seen from the Premier, winning 21 points to 114. But you've had a few days to let it sink in now. What are your thoughts on that performance?
Yeah, you left Portlaoise and you felt a little underwhelmed. But look, you looked at the matches on Sunday and they were very underwhelming too, a lot of them. I think all teams, whether you won or lost last weekend, you wouldn't want to be looking too much into it. I suppose, look, from a Tipperary point of view, it was a potential banana skin. But the Laois took the breeze in the first half, and look, they had probably enough chances to at least go in level, like with the wides they shot, and Brian Hogan having to make a couple of saves. But I just thought, I suppose once Tipp went 6 points up, I didn't think they never looked like losing the game, even though they weren't. Especially that 15-20 minutes was poor stuff altogether. Like, the conditions really deteriorated further, and lads were getting tired. But look, it was a win. We saw elements of what the manager were hoping to get into the team, particularly, I suppose, becoming more comfortable of using the ball, working the ball through the hands, and not driving it long under pressure. Look, there was a couple of aimless clearances. Look, you're always going to get that with maybe a new system, and Pádraic picked up a few balls. But look, I thought when we did things right, we got some excellent scores. It's just getting to do more of that, and hopefully, if the weather conditions allow, we'll get a greater opportunity to see that maybe style develop next Sunday against Kilkenny.
Yeah, Kilkenny coming to town to Semple Stadium. Just a sort of brief overview of the game for those people who weren't there. It was horrendous conditions, so I don't know, maybe you were listening to it on the radio. But Tipperary went 8 points to 4 on ahead in the first half, and Laois had used the ball pretty well, at times using it better than Tipperary, but Tipp, obviously, with the forwards that we have there. They had 3 goal chances in the first half, didn't make them count. It was 11-7 at half-time. Tipp went 15-7 ahead on 39 minutes, so an 8-point lead there. And obviously there was a red card to Paddy Purcell as well, and you thought that the Laois challenge was going to fade away, but they got a goal instantly when an end rolling free was knocked to the net by Maher. There was a case of Tipperary just maybe seeing it out from there. I'll bring Liam Hogan in here now. Liam, you might tilt down your camera just a small bit. But Liam, obviously Tipperary got over the line there. What players impressed you in the game?
First of all, Craig Morgan in defence, he played particularly well, and Mark Kehoe and Dylan Quirk. And I just noticed in Mark Kehoe, he seems to have bulked up the small little bit, which was no harm to him. He really played well. He impressed me, really. He scored a fantastic point down in front of me there in the second half. I think Cheddar Plunkett was disputing it, but from where I was sitting, the ball was definitely over the bar. But yeah, those 3 players impressed me.
Yeah, Shane, from your point of view, is there any player in particular that you would have said, this person has really staked a claim here?
Yeah, I'd say, I suppose Morgan was probably the one I was most focused on, because I just think he has all the tools to be an outstanding defender for Tipperary. And I just thought, even in that game down in Tralee against Kerry, anytime he got the ball, and it was the same last Saturday, when he carried out with the ball, he carried it out with energy, and a decent level of intensity. He wasn't just going through the motions. He was putting a bit of pace onto it, even when working through the hands. So I like that about him. Again, Liam mentioned Mark Kehoe, I think 4 points in play. I think he's probably the closest we have to, I suppose, maybe whenever Seamus Callanan moves on, that nearly a like for like, and he has that ability to get goals. And look, I think we had a couple of goal chances that we had the penalty, and I think Gerard Brown had one that was blocked down too. Dennis Maher had one that hit the side net. And I think maybe on a drier day, you probably get a better feel for how some of those forwards will go. But look, I suppose the one thing, it would have been easy for the management, or maybe for who had the last 3 or 4 weeks, playing this short style, and then you rock up to Portlaoise and it's pouring out of the heavens and it's wind, and you say, okay lads, we'll just play the percentages, we won't take too many risks, we'll just get the ball down the field and we take what happens. No, they did the right thing. I suppose encouraging that the supporters didn't get on their backs anytime there was mistakes made, and look, that's going to happen. And look, we've all anything you would have read about Limerick, like when Limerick started out in 2017 with Kiley and Kinnerk, like they went through some horrors now with the passing, with the game now they're so good at, but like they went through a lot of horrors there, but they were told to stick with it, and look, it's come right for them. I don't think Tipp are going to go down the Limerick road of they're completely following their game plan, but just having being able to mix it up, like when, okay, if we're in difficulty going long or being direct, you can go back to this to maybe suck out an opposition's defence and creating space inside. So,
well, I have to say I was very encouraged with it. Like Craig Morgan is a guy you've been talking up for a while, and obviously you knew the quality was there because he captained that under-20 team to the All-Ireland. But I wanted to see, was there the bit of badness in him, the bit of dog that everyone knows is a positive when you're talking about a quarterback. And I think that did show up. I mean, Stephen Maher was the one forward from the Laois point of view where you're thinking this lad's doing a bit of damage. But once or twice, Morgan won ball against the head against him. So I was quite impressed with that. And also the fact that he seemed really comfortable with being that out ball for the goalkeeper from the puck outs. It didn't bother. You could puck it to him, I'd say, 30 times in a game and he wouldn't care. I like that. I think Barry Heffernan was absolutely brilliant. He was taken off towards the end. But if you're going to play this new game style, which Tipperary are, and obviously I've cursed the whole notion of hitting every ball 100 yards for years now, and I think it's kind of let Tipperary down at times. Like, we have the hurlers to go short, it's do you have the athletes to play this game too? And Barry Heffernan, when he's running out with the ball and doing 1-2 hand passes and this kind of stuff, how do you stop a guy who's 6'4", that fast and strong? Dylan Quirk as well, I thought he also impressed. Some of the newer guys even still, I mean, Mark Keogh was brilliant. What did you make, Shane, of James Quigley at full back? Now, dirty day, but how do you think he went?
I thought he was solid. I suppose I think maybe Laois sort of exploited him there a small bit, was like he seemed to be the guy that Picky Maher sort of picked up at the start, and then Picky started to drift from out to the left wing forward, right wing forward, where he got the points. And it looked to me that it was Quigley that was the man to deal with Taylor. I know Laois brought a man back, and they were trying. I think Tipp wanted to leave Cathal Barrett as the spare man, but I think Laois took that away from him, and it ended up, I think, being Morgan most of the time. But then there was a few times that Barrett was able to get up the field. I think he got that brilliant point off that. I know that we hate the overuse of the hand pass and Tipp, but God, I thought that was a sweet score. Like, it was about 4 or 5 quick hand passes up the stand side, and Barrett stuck it. It looked very, very good. And I thought there was one. Remember, I think there was early in that first half, Cathal Barrett took a short puck out from Brian, and he laid off a pass, and he stayed going up the field, and I think he ended up providing I think he got the ball around 45 yards out, and he ended up passing the ball to Jason Ford for a point. Just the way that some of the other, particularly like Wexford, would have done under Davies' time, that if you're Liam Ryan was very adept with it for Wexford. He's a Liam Ryan, yeah. He'd take a short puck out and he'd give the hand pass, but he'd stay working his way up through the field, and suddenly he might be on the bend of a pass inside in their opposite 45. So there was elements definitely of the new style of hurling in what Tipp were trying to do.
Liam, what did you make of Dennis Maher playing full forward? You know, it's obviously been a number of years since he's involved. He was back in, dirty dog of a day, but I suppose in some ways you're thinking he's a serious physical competitor. Maybe those conditions would suit him. I would imagine he revelled in that.
Yeah, I was expecting a little bit more from Dennis, to be honest with you. Okay, conditions were terrible, and let's face it. Dennis, there's a lot more in Dennis than what we've seen, really. Hopefully he gets another chance again. I particularly was impressed with the leadership of the Superman's man,
Jason Ford.
Jason Ford. I thought he really showed coolness. He's an experienced player now. I thought he was a leader up there, really. And so Dennis, I really was expecting a little bit more of him, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I I suppose the thing about it was probably the one aspect of our play, and I think Dennis got sucked up in it too, and a few more, is that I thought our inside forward, I thought some of the ball that was played into our inside forwards was very, very good. And a lot of the time they got out in front and won the ball, but they had very, very few support runners coming off the shoulder to take a pass. Like you, particularly in that second half, we struck some bad wides, and some of the time there were wides struck because the player like Paul Flynn and Jason Ford, remember in particular, they had nobody else to pass it. They had no other option, so the only option they had was to take on a shot that wasn't there. So like that's probably an element I think we need to that will need to be developed going forward. Like we can't just shoot from stupid positions. Like there's nothing as worse for a defender to try and deal with than maybe a player coming in from the midfield or the half forward line at pace running onto a ball. So look, I thought that was the only aspect of the play that probably let us down on the night. And I don't maybe like, we know Dennis is not blessed with explosive pace, but if Dennis does play against Kilkenny this weekend, I'd just love to see Dennis. Okay, I'm not the quickest. If I get the ball, immediately scan who's around me to lay. If all Dennis did was, if he does start again next week, give 3 or 4 assists for points like he did in the first half, that's his job done for me. Like because like it's just that guy who can give the proper assist is so valuable.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. He did set up 4 or 5 in the first half. I'm just scanning through my notes here, and there was definitely 4 that I'm seeing straight away in terms of scoring chances. So I thought he did all right, but like you do need someone who's a goal threat on the inside, and he can be on certain days. But generally, he tends to turn. Drop the shoulder, lean into the man, run at him, and sometimes that causes mayhem, sometimes not. I think you mentioned Paul Flynn there, and to be honest, I was frustrated with some of the shots he had. Obviously, he's a great 6-man, but like taking shots from ridiculous areas. In hurling, you're never too far away to try and pass the ball to someone because you have a stick that'll allow you to hit it 100 yards. And I think, like as an inside forward, if you're playing this game where you're going to fill the middle and run the ball, the inside man needs to be able to collect it and feed it back out 30 yards if he has to someone who's coming through and loop.
But I thought there was definitely one of Flynn shots on the far side, the terrace side. There was no Tipp support player within 30 yards of him. He really
I think he's hurting his chances of pushing, breaking into that team by taking shots like that, because the whole idea of handing the ball around to each other is that it's a complete team game. And I'm not saying he's not a team player at all. I'm just saying those two stood out to me, and I was kind of pulling my hair out. What about Ger Brown? I think there was good signs there. Like he missed a couple of chances, that's fine. But he got on the ball a lot, especially when he swapped from the left wing to the right wing. He started collecting ball in his own half. So I thought that was quite encouraging. Do you want to start on that, Liam or Shane?
Look, we all know what Ger Brown can bring. He's at times he's a little bit lax out in the field and maybe relaxed a little bit too much. But yes, I was encouraged by what I saw of him, all right. And but I want to see more of it, really. But I think that we have to remember it was the first game. Back in the league, and I've seen Tipperary play league games before, and you'd be going home wondering, where are we going? And then they come out against Kilkenny, below Nolan Park, or below, and absolutely they're a different team. They're transformed altogether. So maybe sometimes we take the opposition maybe a little bit too light, and take Laois a bit too light. But I think bear in mind it was a horrible night. Horrible night to play any game, and I think I can't wait for a simple stadium on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. I know I'd agree with you in terms of Ger. Like I thought it was a good in terms of return for Ger. Like it was a good start, and I suppose in terms of what I was saying about players coming off the shoulder, like he's made for that. Coming from deep, maybe making that blistering run coming off the shoulder to maybe take a pop pass or run into space was like him. Ger Brown and Jake Morris, they smell goal. If there's a half chance of a goal, they'll go for the goal first. They're like I think once those 3 guys, especially, maybe just get their confidence levels up, a bit more belief that they proper belong at senior level. I think they're going to be serious options for Tipperary.
I'm sure you noted in the first half a couple of times when Tipp had frees around their own 65/midfield that Jason Ford was ushered away. And it must have been a pre-planned move that Dan McCormick just buried the ball into the corner towards the end line for Dennis Maher to go out and collect. What did you make of that? Those I wasn't really on board with those. In general, I came away from that thinking Tipp are now trying to do the modern thing the right way. I fully support this. Didn't always come off. But that particular thing, Shane, did that stand out to you?
Yeah, I noticed it all right. I thought maybe it was probably outside Jason's range, considering I think Tipp were playing into the breeze in the first half. So I just thought maybe it was... I don't mind that maybe a bit of... If the option is on, if Dan could maybe take it quicker because he sees there's a bit of space for Mark or Dennis to run into, that it can, like, I think Tipperary hurl best when there's less structure in the match. I think in games like it suits the likes of Limerick and even Kilkenny in their pomp. That the more structured games were, the more it suited. Whereas I do think Tipp, the likes of Tipp and Cork especially, they love matches that where there's few stoppages, the better. Keep the flow going in it.
Yeah, Liam, do you like the direction Tipperary are going with this game?
Not particularly, no. I'm old-fashioned. I'm old-fashioned, really. I like the cut and trust. I like the way Loughmore played their game this year in the club championship. They absolutely smothered the daylights out of us and give nothing away. Passes can go wrong. Easy turnovers can lead to scores to the opposition, and then you're wondering. It's a breakfast debate between yourself and Barry Hogan about short puckouts. I absolutely dread them. Really do. I dread short passes. I think some players aren't comfortable making short passes.
But do you think it's necessary for the modern game? Because, Limerick are going to have 12 men in their own half, so what's the point in going long every time?
Well, I'm not going long all the time either. I like this diagonal pass, this 50 or 60-yard pass off the hurley to a better placed teammate. But these short hand passes, what I call telephone box passes to players that stand right beside you, I dread them. I really do. Look at it's. I'll say I'm old-fashioned and all that, and he's working in most cases, but. I just dread what could happen if that something goes wrong.
Yeah, Shane, do you think it's necessary?
I think it is. I think you have to do certain part of it, like, because like you hurling. I've said it for 3 or 4 years. Hurling, there's definitely a strong lacrosse element in hurling at the moment, where possession is king, and you've got to work the ball up the field, and you got to try and not give the ball away, because if you give the ball away, and we saw Limerick the first 20 minutes of the second half when Tipperary lost possession, they worked the ball back up the field, and they got 110 from about 12 shots a goal. I sat down on Sunday and I watched the 2 games on telly, and look, they were engrossing in terms of a contest, like real good arm wrestle, but oh Jesus, like there's times in Dublin Waterford game where around the middle of their field, it could have been 14 or 15 men in about 20 yards of space, and all you were doing was giving hand pass. I'm hitting 40. I wouldn't say I'm old, but Jesus, there's something about the old days where loads of space and 2 men a battle for the ball, and whoever won the ball, that's where it's. And it just that sort of risk has been taken out of the game by what Limerick and Waterford and Wexford have been doing to an extent over the last 5 years. But look, it has, particularly for Limerick, it's proven very, very effective, and you've got to do a certain element, particularly at the very, very high level. And look, Ballygunner, it's creeping into club level. If you look at Ballygunner, like, who are very, very comfortable doing it as well. And I just think it'll be a fantastic that club final on Saturday. It's going to be such a contrast in styles between Ballyhale and Ballygunner. It'll be fascinating to see how that game goes.
Oh, I think that's going to be an unbelievable game, and probably more attractive than any inter-county fixture this weekend. Like, 2 brilliant teams who know how to use the ball. But look, I would love if it was back to 50-50 balls up the field all the time. God knows, playing in the half back line with puckouts raining down on top of you, it was glorious. But that day is gone. I even noticed playing club the last few years, it's an awful lot more short balls into space. You just don't get to contest those anymore. It's a kind of case of if you can't beat them, join them. And I think you're going to be left behind if you don't work it forward. Even though I do agree with you, definitely. Those typical Kenny games of 10 years ago, you couldn't beat it for excitement. But
I was looking at the score from, was it Cork and Clare last weekend, 230 to 221. So that's the minimum 55 puckouts. Throw in the few wides, probably 65 puckouts. How can you get a flow in a match when the ball is restarting so often? And I remember, was it 2017, that typical Kenny League match in Thurles, and you had that 4-minute spell where the ball never left the field and there was no score on either side. But geez, just that was, even though there was no score, I thought, Jesus, like it was just warrior stuff from the two of them. Like it was, but as you say, Shane, that day is dying off, unfortunately, and you got to move with the times, whether we like it or not.
Liam, can I ask you, what did you make of the decision of Ronan Maher being picked as captain? It went down to a secret players ballot, and I suppose, given the tough time that the Maher family would have had with Pádraic having to announce his retirement last week, I'm not saying that's the reason he got it. Obviously not. Like, he's a brilliant player and would have been a massive candidate. I'd say it was nearly like a foregone conclusion at that stage, and congratulations to him.
Yeah, I'm not privy to as to what went on. Let me tell you, number one, and number two, he's a great player. And if you ask me tomorrow morning, would I be disappointed that Ronan Maher got captaincy? I wouldn't be. And like, there's a lot of other players in that category as well. If he's in position now, like, and let him, I wish him the best of luck in 2022. And he's an inspirational player. There's no doubt about it. He can play full back. He can play half back. He's not afraid to have a go for score. And he's there now. There's no point in complaining about
it.
Yeah. I thought it was. I thought it was an interesting one that Colm Bonnar let the players pick it. Like, usually it's the manager now, and like the that. I can see the thinking of it. Like, he's trying to create a little more ownership of the team, from the players. Look, it's as he says, like at any team, it's the players that drive it, and if the more successful teams are the ones that drive it themselves, and it's just the management that provide the environment for them to be the best they can be. And look, I think it's going to be fascinating over the next few games, because, like, if you're on the face of it, you're looking at Ronan Maher, Brian McGrath, Seamus Kennedy, Barry Heffernan for the half-back line. 3 into 4, and you throw in Paddy Cadell and Alan Flynn, who can be flexible, play mid. Like, there's going to be fair competition for that half-back if they don't see Ronan as a full-back. And I think Ronan has to be our 6 in some capacity. If you have to play a sweeper or play a second half-back, maybe as a sort of a Declan Hannon role, I don't mind. I'd agree with the fact that I thought Ronan was sort of wasted at wing back last year, whereas, like, it's easy. Like, most of the ball will go down the middle of the field anyway, whether you mean it or not. And if Ronan is there as sort of a barrier, like, he's not the quickest, but by God, he's a powerful presence there in that middle area.
And not only that, he has a range of maybe 100 plus yards with even the flick of a wrist. So
not forgetting there, sorry, Shane, Brian McGrath as well.
Oh, I mentioned Brian. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many changes they make for Kilkenny now at the weekend. Like, I know the Thurles and Knockmore lads were back later than the rest, so that they're probably being gradually, that maybe they don't feel there's a full game in them yet. Maybe they'll be ready to start this weekend. So
I'd be interested to see if they were targeting this game, and some of the lads who didn't start the last day, like, just looking through the bench here, like Paddy Cadell obviously picked up an injury against Kerry in that defeat a month ago. Maybe he'll be right. Callan came on late on. Ronan Maher, Brian McGrath, like you've mentioned, even Garrod O'Connor, would he get a look in here?
Yeah.
About the style of play, actually, Bonnar said afterwards, some of the moves we had were exceptional, and some of the scores we've taken, and some of the moves, maybe we took 1 or 2 hairy options, or the executions mightn't have worked, but we don't concentrate on mistakes. We compliment the bravery of the lads who take those decisions. It's easy to just lash the ball down the field, so it takes bravery to do what we to do that, and we just need to become more clinical. Now, he's talking then about the Kilkenny game this weekend. And he was going on about confidence can be a fickle thing. It's about the team and how we work together. We're always confident that there was a display in us. And he's talking a bit more about, obviously, the results coming then. So do you expect, like, Liam, you would expect Tipperary to be in a very good position to win this game when you know that the Ballyhale lads, TJ Reid, Adrian Mullen, Owen Cody, and so on, that they're not going to be available. So Tipperary should have a stronger team in the first place.
I agree, yes, and nothing excites a Tipperary man more now. One time it was a Cork jersey, now it's a Kilkenny jersey, and taking them on in Simple Stadium, it has to be worth 2 points to them.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
But like, it's very rare that Kilkenny sort of bend over for Tipperary, if you know what I mean.
Oh, they don't. No, at the end of the day, it might be only a puff of the ball in it.
I looked at the Kilkenny team last Sunday, and It wouldn't scare you, like, and you can see that he's playing the likes of Pádraic Walsh up centre forward. It just shows you where they're struggling at the moment, that they're not bringing through the next. I think listening to the commentary, I listened to the first half. David Blanchfield, really, of the new breed, seemed to be the one that was standing out. But like it was okay. They have Owen Cody and Adrian Mullen, but they're supposed to compare to 15, 20 years ago, and they're not bringing through the exciting talent they have. And look, on paper, I think Tipp have got to be winning this, because I would think that the two games to come against Dublin and Waterford, Tipp will get a severe test, and you couldn't guarantee they'll get 2 wins from that. As like if I think to go into those 2 games, I think Tipp would need 2 wins from 2. And I did think myself, looking at the schedule, if Tipp finished the league with maybe 3 wins out of 5 would be a par, 4 out of 5 would be a good league. So like I would have definitely said the 3 out of those 3 wins, Laois, Kilkenny and Antrim, you would say you'd be targeting them as the 3 definites. And if you could pick a win against Dublin or Waterford, I think that would be a very, very good league campaign going into the championship, hopefully, and carrying some momentum in.
Yeah, so for anyone who wasn't aware of Kilkenny's result at the weekend, it was 2-15 to 3-9 for Antrim. The teams were level 1-6 apiece at the halftime break, but I don't think Antrim scored at all in the third quarter. Yeah, up till the 53rd minute. So Kilkenny went 2-11 to 1-6 ahead and held on. But if you just look at that, the forward line, actually even the team for Kilkenny, I'll run through it briefly. I'm sure they'll make changes too. So you have Brennan in goal, then Butler, Delaney and Walsh as the full back line. Delaney, I believe, picked up an injury. Then you have James Maher, Hugh Lawler, David Blanchfield, Mikey Carey and Paddy Deegan, who, we're used to seeing in the full back line, played in the full forward line for O'Loughlin's last year. Then you had John Donnelly, Pádraic Walsh and Tom Phelan, and an inside line of Billy Ryan, Martin Keown, who scored 2-2, and James Bergen, who scored 3 points. So it's definitely not a star-studded Kilkenny team. It's still going to be a good Kilkenny team. It always is. And they'll certainly put up a challenge. But I think Tipperary need to be putting the knife in when they can against their strong rivals. Do you see many changes happening in this game, Shane?
I think we'll see. I think we'll see 3 or 4. I think. I think the opportunity is there. You've got to be looking at lads too. I'd love to. It's maybe some of the likes of Morgan and Keogh, the younger lads that did well. I'd love to see them go again. Because look, I think they need that. I see Garrod O'Connor went very well for. Was it in Cork IT or whatever they're called nowadays? Last night, I think he got 8 points, 4 from play. So look, he's another one. I suppose Conor Bowe is sort of, he's been carrying a bit of a hamstring there. I think they played last night. UCC, they were beaten. So,
yeah. But
I don't see his name down there. So maybe that he aggravated that injury again. So, but I think the exciting one for me of the ones is Brian McGrath. Like I just want to see. I want to see this guy get a proper run in the Tipp jersey at this level. Like he hasn't got a proper run, and he'd be the one if there was to be one of the fringe guys maybe from years past. He's the one I'd love to see get an opportunity starting this weekend and through particularly the Dublin and Waterford games where you get a real severe test.
Yeah, I'd like to see Robert Byrne just throw him out there, give him the game time. He's been on the panel several years, a bit like Brian McGrath, a bit like Paddy Cadell. I'd like to see the two of them thrown in there for a couple of league games, and let's see, how do these lads fare? Liam, anyone for you that you'd like to see in the team?
No, I agree with what Shane has said there. It possibly look at after a win.
He might change the goalie.
He might. Well, I won't talk about that. No, look at I was delighted to see how well Jason played the last day, and Jake Morris as well. And I can't see too many changes. Like if you're going to go with a winning team, that's already after 2 points with Leash, what was it? A dour struggle,
Yeah, I know. I'd like to see 1 or 2 anyway. But I think more game time for the likes of Dylan Quirk, Barry Heflin, Craig Morgan, even James Quigley. I'm sure that'll happen too. Just even again, we've had a bit more time to reflect on the fact that Paddy Maher has had to retire from intercounty hurling. So I was part of a group that spoke with him last week, and I'll just play a little clip here when he talked about the severity of the injury. He still has to get some scans to find out the exact nature, but here's what he had to say here, just a short little clip.
Yeah, but sure, again, the list was very eye-opening. He really listed off of what damage could be like if you're putting yourself, especially when you're working in the head neck area. the guy you could, end up, the way he was pushing me is, do you want your girlfriend lifting you off the couch and putting you to bed every night? That extreme, that kind of way. So when he started talking like that, it was like, this is a fairly black and white decision for me anyway. So, but look, thankfully, as I said to Pat earlier on, the risk has been taken away now, please God, and with a bit of guidance from the medics going forward, I'll hopefully have a perfectly healthy life to live.
Shane, you were also on that call. God, when he obviously went into serious depth talking about it, but God, when he came out with that line, I was like, wow, there really is no decision to be made.
Yeah, sure. Like we were probably only getting the soft version. Like you can only imagine maybe what sort of stuff the consultants were going into that. One bad bang, and I suppose Pádraic didn't actually go into the nuts and bolts of what potentially could have happened if he was on the got a wrong belt or a wrong collision or something. But I couldn't get over how would you say, maybe it probably hasn't fully hit him yet, and I actually think it'll only fully hit him when the club championship gets going later in the summer, because I'd say not being able to tug out for SARS in the senior championship, but that'll nearly feel worse. Like, so, look, I thought he was so honest and so open and nearly understanding. It's actually, look, it's still hard to get your head around it, even from a supporter's point of view, that he won't be there. And look, I was sort of intrigued over the last week to see, like, he was always, of that crew of 6 or 7 guys that were there for so long, he was always my favourite. But just reading even some of the outside, the journalists and other players, like, Jesus, like, to see that he's been classed up there with the greats like Jimmy Doyle, the Tipperary greats, you think, I wasn't too far in my feeling that this guy was something different. And no disrespect to Noel McGrath or Bonnar or Brendan, that I don't know. It was, I think Pádraic Maher probably epitomised what Tipperary associate themselves to be, a true Tipperary hurler, sort of a warrior spirit, but plays the game fair and never takes a backward step. Like, I was just so impressed with the way he carried himself there last week.
Yeah, Liam, we weren't talking to you actually after last week's show. Where would you, like, you would have seen a few more hurlers than myself and Shane would, where would you rank him?
Well, the one thought that entered my head during the week, thinking about him and talking to people from here there about him, and the people were in shock, really. If we could go back in time to the year 2000, where we were picking the team of the millennium, and he was a hurler at that stage, I reckon he would be a shoe-in, either wing back or full back, without a doubt. It was a fantastic hurler. The first time I saw him really to impress me was in the All-Ireland minor final 2006, when he was marking Joe Canning. Joe was the star player at the time at minor, going for his 3rd minor All-Ireland, but Maher snuffed him out that day. There's no doubt about it. And I remember the first day he wore a senior jersey. The first day I saw him wearing a senior jersey against Galway in the league in Salt Hill, and he was immense that day. And you could see confidence in the team. Liam Sheedy was manager at the time, just lifting once him and a few more players from that era came into the scene. He was a fantastic hurler, and I'd say any era he'd make any team out. Best 15 in Ireland.
Liam, can I ask you about the Tipperary footballers at the weekend, losing 2-16 to 2-8 at home against Leitrim, and I suppose on the back of the 10 points apiece draw with Waterford? It's not the greatest start to the league that Tipperary could have had in Division 4.
Well, I felt after the game, I felt so sorry for David Power when we interviewed him. He was really down and a little bit emotional too, because he has put so much work into this team. It was so disappointing. As I said in my report on the paper, like that. And again, it's gone back to the hurling. I don't like this short passing. I don't like this lateral passing over and back. And Tipp indulged in that last Sunday. They had only one clear-cut chance. It tested the goalkeeper just approaching half-time there. Sean O'Connell had an effort from about 20 yards out, but the Leitrim goalkeeper dealt with it fairly well. Look, there's no doubt about it. As you said, there's a generation just has come to an end of a great era for Tipperary football. But I still can't get my mind around the fact that with such a vast county that we have, that we can have more footballers to take their place. The enthusiasm for football in South Tipperary and West Tipperary is fantastic, and I can't see why there aren't players stepping up to the plate and bringing Tip along. Division 4, Tipperary shouldn't be in Division 4. But look, it's not the first time they're in it either, and they came out of it again shining as well. And like the year they beat Louth above Croke Park. As I said, I felt very sorry for David Power. I thought he was really, I know he went into the game. He shot Jack Kindy. He shot Stephen O'Brien, which is an awful loss. And Shaughnessy left the field after about 11 minutes in the first half. But again, it goes back. Maybe I believe players should be playing on the front foot. That's what the game of Gaelic football and hurling is about. Really taking on the opposition. And Tipperary, I think, paid too much respect to Leitrim last Sunday. I was looking at the Leitrim players walking in off the field under the tunnel there. Shane, where we meet after the game. And they're fine, big men. Keith Byrne, he really impressed me last Sunday. From the moment he kicked over the first ball, over the bar with his left foot, it was as if he was out in his own backyard. And his delivery for the first goal in the second half was real class, out from the wing, under pressure. Brilliant pass effort with the foot, mind you. And and Tipp's best forward was, no doubt about it, was Colin Sweeney. He got 2-6, and even by his performances, it wasn't one of his best. He was really really well marked, but his second goal was very fortuitous. He, under a dropping ball, and he held out his hand, and it deflected off his hand into the net. That gave maybe a better score, a reflection on the scoreboard. And you must remember the last 2 points that Leitrim got, they were just fisted over the bar. They could have went for the goal as well, and you wouldn't say a word against them for it, because they had that much. They were that much confidence in the second half when they really opened up. And at 8 points, I think Tipp were lucky to just do it by 8.
Yeah, and just a final question, Liam, before we let you go. Was there any young players, new players that you thought acquitted themselves okay?
No, not really. Look, it was every player was under pressure there last Sunday. Even in terms of fielding, we just don't seem to be able to get up for those aerial shots and win marks and things like that. No. It was a bad day at the office, and hopefully they can put it to bed now. And they have tough matches coming on the line with Sligo and Cavan, who are top of the table. And I was just talking to a few Leitrim people. Of course, they're watching their neighbours over the border there in Sligo, and they're saying that Sligo are putting a nice team together again. So look at it's
yeah. Yeah, I was going to finish up on this point. I think Tipperary football over the last 10 years, look, okay, the golden generation is gone. There's no doubt it's dying away, and I suppose the lack of underage success since 2015 is the chickens are coming home to roost. But certainly, I think that over the last 4 or 5 years at senior level, when we've gone well, we played our best football sort of off the cuff. When we're sort of, I just think it suits us, and I'd agree with Liam. I think definitely since 2020, it's very structured football, and I just don't think it suits us. I think there's a sort of a gung ho approach sort of suits us, and I whether you can abandon what they've been doing for the last 2 months in training in 2 weeks before they go to Wexford, I'm not sure. But just even from what I saw in Dungarvan, and I just don't see. There's the lack of enjoyment in the football that's out there. I don't think it's getting the best out of the players that's there.
Okay, well, look, we're going to finish up on the football. We'll touch on it again next week. So, Liam, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll chat to you again soon.
Cheers, Liam.
Okay, we're going to move on to talk about Camogie now. We've got Thomas Conway joining us here from the front seat of the good car there, Thomas. How are things with you?
My mobile studio, yeah, exactly, yeah. I'm very good. How are you, lads?
We're not too bad. You saw the Tipperary Camogie team at the weekend. A fairly hefty win altogether. 3-16 to 3 points against Down. Ciara Hogan, Casey Hennessy and Jenny Grace, they got the goals in the first 17 minutes. Were you impressed with what you saw? I suppose you couldn't but be.
Yeah, I mean, on first appraisal, it was a hugely impressive performance. But I suppose how much you can read into that kind of a game, it's not so simple, or you couldn't be sure. Like Down, I kind of expected a little bit more from Down, in the sense that they had a number of notable results last year. They were pipped twice, kind of 1 point defeats in the group stages of the championship, and then they put up a fairly good showing against Cork. And in the end, they retained their senior championship status. But I think on Saturday, it kind of just demonstrated the gulf between the top four, if you like. We often speak of a top three in Camogie, Cork, Kilkenny, Galway, but you could almost regard them as a top four now. Adding Tipperary, it kind of demonstrated the gulf between those sides and the rest of the pack, the chasing pack. Now it'll be interesting to see what kind of a showing Offaly and Dublin put up in the subsequent games, and then Tipp go to Galway to play Galway, All-Ireland champions, in their final group game, and that will probably determine the league final place. But as a first outing in the National League, it was hugely impressive from Tipp. They really played a frenetic, fast-paced game. I thought Maher and Grace O'Brien were particularly impressive in midfield, and likewise their inside forward line, which obviously has huge pace in Clodagh McIntyre and Casey Hennessy. And they look very well synchronized, very well managed as a unit. So it was a promising start. And I suppose, as I mentioned previously, it set down a marker for the forthcoming year.
I thought, Thomas, like that you mentioned, or Shane mentioned, the 3 goal scorers. Like those 3 players were on the intermediate team last year, so like they've stepped up. Like there's no drum and inch players for the moment. They're getting extended rest. Van only came off the bench. Like 3-16 with probably how would you say, an inexperienced team was impressive. And like I think there was something. I think you mentioned with Bill Mullaney the week before that maybe Tipp need to improve their scoring rate, maybe looking ahead to the championship, that they're probably not getting enough scores to beat the Corks and the Kilkennys and Galway. Was there a more of an offensive mindset in what you saw, even though they weren't playing probably a top quality opponent?
Yeah, no, there certainly was. And I mean, the likes of, Claire Hogan, really impressive, and showed huge composure. Even her first goal, she had the presence of mind to actually sidestep effectively around the keeper and swing it in. And it's kind of that attacking ability was definitely there. And it started from, I think, Grace O'Brien in midfield, who's vice captain along with Julianne Burke. Herself and Maher, and it's great to see Maher back in the fold, and Kierda, her sister, came on as well. But to me, kind of adopted a defensive role, a defensive midfielder, and Grace kind of got forward and did an awful lot of attacking, and that seemed to work quite well. I mean, then Tipp at the half-back line, they established a platform from the half-back line, and there was kind of conviction in their play going forward. They were intent on attacking and maintain that pace throughout, when it would have been probably easier to take their foot off the pedal in the second half. So certainly there's a lot of potential in some of those new players, and it does bode well for the next few months.
Yeah, and also in Division 2, the Tipperary second team lost to Kilkenny 3-7 points. But just again to reflect on the first team, Courtney Ryan was one of a slew of newcomers that impressed well. She was in the centre back with Karen Kendi awaiting a shoulder operation.
Yeah.
Bill Mullaney said afterwards, Courtney's a fabulous player. We ran out the panel. We had only 21, so everybody was getting an opportunity today. And the girls we took off didn't do anything wrong. It's just we need to see everybody and give everybody an opportunity. It took them a while. Those players that came on in the second half to get going, but everybody is in with a chance, and it's up to themselves to put their hands up. We need to have options. We need to have girls looking over their shoulders. We need to have competition within the panel. And he also mentioned the Drum and Inch girls, and he said they'll be back. They've had a long year. They need a break. 14 months without a break is a long time, but at the same time, they'll have to earn their jersey. We're not handing it out cheaply. The girls that are there now are doing a great job and a great start, but it's only a start. So he's really kind of laying down a marker in terms of nobody has a jersey earned already.
Yeah, he is. And I mean, he said in an interview in The Guardian last week that really Tipp have to make a final, an All-Ireland final this year. That is their objective. I mean, he didn't underplay them or try to tune down expectations. He said it very firmly and forthrightly that their goal this year is to break that semi-final barrier and reach an All-Ireland final. And I think really what has been notable is that, they have a growing number of assets. They can play in different ways. Like Shane mentioned the new players there. Then you have the pace of Clodagh and Casey in there in the inside line. And then you have Coitavana and the drum and inch players to come back into the fold. And her experience and composure and free-taking as a markswoman will be pivotal. So they have an awful lot of options there and can play a few different ways, which I think would be crucial when it comes to taking on the likes of Galway, Kilkenny, Cork. And there was also a physicality about them, which was notable. I mean, the gulf in physicality between the sides was another very notable aspect of it. And even, I was at the Camogie Miners were playing the following day against Limerick, and that was something you would pick out as well. They're, exceptionally athletic, and you can see an emphasis has been put on strength and conditioning and fitness, and certainly it is starting to make a difference from what I've seen.
Shane, any final thoughts on the Camogie side before I quickly ask you about the All-Ireland Club final?
Yeah, I suppose it'll be as important will be Karen Kennedy getting that operation soon on that shoulder, because she is going to be so important. Whatever about the league, if Tipp are going to get to an All-Ireland, possibly win an All-Ireland, she needs to be there. And look, an All-Ireland final is in early August, and we all know any shoulder injury, if they're not dealt with properly or quickly, they can take a while to recover even after an operation. So hopefully that'll be sorted sooner rather than later.
Thomas, we're going to talk about the All-Ireland Club final, Ballygunner against Ballyhale. What way are you leaning for this one?
It's mouth-watering, isn't it? I mean, you probably have to give the edge to Ballyhale, I think. Not based maybe on form, but just based on sheer experience and their ability to dig out and win games, as we've seen, as we saw in the past game and the one prior to that. I mean, with TJ there, and I suppose their ability to win games. But really, I mean, if you're looking like Ballygunner, now I know the game against Lockmore probably didn't win them any fans from a neutral perspective, but I mean they're a brilliant side. I mean, Desi Hutchinson is a magician in there. I'd lean towards Ballyhale, but I mean, I wouldn't begrudge Ballygunner at the same time. I mean, they've been there. How many Waterford titles is it? Is it 6 in a row or something like that?
I think it's 8 in a row.
It could be 8. Yeah, it could be 8. It is 8. Yeah, I would just slant towards Ballyhale for their experience.
Shane, it's not too many teams that you can go through the Ballyhale forward line and think we nearly have enough lads to man-mark all these inter-county stars of past and present. Like Ballygunner probably should have the answers if anyone is ever going to.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I actually think one matchup this weekend, and I don't know how his shoulder is after the semi-final, is Darren Mullen and Desi Hutchinson. I just think that's going to be so important that Darren Mullen's able to play it, because.
Do you not think it'd be Joey Holden on him? No.
Oh, I don't think so. I think you need somebody with a quicker turn of foot, I think, to go with him. Particularly, he's probably going to move back inside. I know he played a bit further out the field against Schlockneil, but I definitely think in the wide open spaces of Croke Park, he's going to be playing a bit closer to goals. So, look, I think Ballygunner are marginal favourites, but you just can't rule out the know-how of Ballyhale at Croke Park and final days. It's just like even the 2 years ago when they beat Borrisley, I didn't think Ballyhale played overly well that day, but they were comfortable winners. Like, they just have that aura about them, and they know what it takes to get the job done. I think it'll be a cracking final. I think it'll be two very, very good finals. Well, hopefully, I think that the football will be tight, but it might be high scoring. I
expect 2 great.
What about you think, Shane?
I'm still kind of torn on this one because, like I said, I go through the matchups for Ballygunner. I think for the most part they do have certain answers, but like TJ Reid, even though we talked about that maybe he doesn't have the pace of old, but he's still if you put that ball in his hand at club level, especially where you get that bit more room and you're not constantly stifled by pressure, people pressuring you, he can still cut you open. Colm Fennelly's still in great shape. He can cut you open. Look at what they did against Clough Ballacalla. Was it something like 29 points or something ridiculous in the end? So Ballygunner need to, if they do concede a goal, don't panic. I don't see any reason why they would, because they've got great experience. Look at the spine of the team. How many club teams have Stephen O'Keefe, Barry Coughlin, Philip Mahoney, and then, Pádraic Mahoney, Desi Hutchinson, and so on. And there's plenty of other lads who play for Waterford too. Real hard one to nail down. I feel like I'm slightly leaning towards Ballygunner just because they've actually, both teams have regenerated an awful lot in the last couple of years. But I don't know, it's almost like they've got such a mean edge about them this year and they're willing to get it done any which way. I'm kind of starting to lean that way.
I think if Ballygunner win this one, they could dominate for there's nothing going to stop them and Waterford for a long time. They seem to have Waterford. They just have the pick down there to have the Waterford, nearly most of Waterford City, apart from maybe a bit of Rowan. Okay, you have Mount Sion and De La Salle and Rowan Moore to a lesser extent, but they just seem to have a huge catchment area. And just before we go, I know Shane, you were having to go, but Thomas spoke with Peter Creed and the ladies footballers are starting out next Sunday away to Kerry. So I suppose great to see them back out there, Thomas, again.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's a really important game for both sides now, but particularly Tipp, because given last season and their form, obviously they managed to retain senior status in that game against Tyrone, and they were blistering on that day in particular. So, and I mean, Creedon is an experienced manager. He knows the players and his previous experience coaching the players at underage level. So I'd expect him to to have them well organized. He did point out, I was speaking to him on Monday, and he did point out a very interesting thing, which, it's a trend in ladies football that a lot of scores tend to flow in one direction in very brief periods. So, one of Tipp's downfalls last year was their inability to kind of withstand that pressure. They play well for 10, 15 minutes and then all of a sudden let in a slew of points and goals. And, that ultimately cost them in most games. So if they can develop an ability to survive the other team's kind of purple patch or period of dominance, it could go a really long way. And once they get the light of Aisling Maloney back into the fold, I mean, there's a lot of potential in this Tipp side. I know it's a dangerous word, potential, but I would expect better for them, certainly from them in 2022.
Yeah, and I suppose long term, short term for Aisling McCarthy, it's disappointing to see her AFL season ended with a broken wrist, but you probably think long term that will probably help the Tipp footballers when she comes back. She'll be fresh. She won't be overly played. That wrist injury should be cleared up, and I suppose she was never going to play in the league, but by the time the championship comes around in May or June, she should be back fighting fit.
Yeah, indeed.
And fresh as a daisy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it from Tippcast this week. We'll be back again next week. Don't forget to pick up a copy of the Nina Guardian. Thanks very much, Shane and Thomas and Liam Hogan before that. See you, lads.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Welcome to Tippcast by the Nina Guardian.